Welcome to another book talk with Tracy. Today I wanted to read from this book, Neighbours, the Neighbours series, a contemporary Christian romance, season 1. And, this is the current cover, but it has been out in other versions. So this is the third version. And in fact, this first part that I'm going to read was at one time out as an audiobook, but I don't think it's available anymore. In any case, it's a fun book because it is written from several different points of view of people who live in an apartment building in Calgary, Alberta. So this first part is from the point of view of one of the main characters whose name is Lester Tibbett. So I'm going to go ahead and read from the first chapter, and this is episode 1, New in the Neighbourhood. Late summer. The air was warm, but not oppressive. A slight breeze sent a shiver through the poplar trees lining the boulevard. Light and shadow danced together on the sidewalk as the sun's rays filtered down through the leaves. The whish of passing traffic a few streets over underscored the relative silence on the quiet street, marked only by the melodic offerings of a songbird high up in the trees. Honk, honk! Hey, you're blocking the driveway! Get that rust bucket out of the way! The tranquility was shattered. The impatient driver of the new BMW laid on the horn and craned his head around before jamming it into gear and backing up with a screech. Cranking the wheel, he swung past the offending blue pickup and U-Haul trailer, coming dangerously close to clipping the front fender of the truck. The parting expletive and accompanying hand signal was not lost on the occupants of the rig. "What's your rush?" Lester leaned out the window of the dusty truck and shook his fist at the retreating silver sports coupe. With a disgusted grunt, he pulled his head back into the cab. "We are blocking the street," Patsy noted, watching the now minuscule BMW. "I mean, couldn't we just pull closer to the front doors or something?" She surveyed her brother for a moment and then flopped back against the rather unforgiving bench seat with a sigh. "I forgot you have everything under control." Lester Ray Tibbett gave his young sister a withering look. "As a matter of fact, I do. No room to turn around. I don't know how they expect folks to move in and out of these blasted apartments with no room to maneuver a trailer." The apartment block to which the brother and sister were relocating was a square, 4-story structure situated on a narrow, tree-lined street in an older section of Calgary. If you could call any part of the city old. The Prairie City had boomed to such a degree in recent years that it was a miracle they'd found an apartment at all. Lester inched the vehicle back a few more millimeters, then pressed his foot against the brake. He put the truck in park while simultaneously engaging the emergency brake. He slammed out of the vehicle, keys in hand, leaving the tinny reverberation of the door to echo in his sister's ears. "Come on, we haven't got all day," he called over his shoulder. Lester blocked up the U-Haul's tires and unlocked the safety latch on the back doors. With a creak, he swung the doors wide, revealing the contents within. Placing his hands on hips, he surveyed the stacks of boxes and furniture. He took off his cowboy hat and wiped his brow with the back of his checkered sleeve. His closely cropped brown hair was stuck to his head in a flattened ring where the hat had been, curling up at odd angles everywhere else. A day's growth of stubble darkened his jaw until it merged with well-defined sideburns. Patsy stood next to her brother and groaned. "This is going to take forever." "No complaining. The longer we stand around, the longer it'll take." Patsy let out a dramatic sigh, but extended her arms to receive the first box. Lester piled 2 more on top before nodding his head for her to get a move on. He watched her for a few seconds as she strode to the building's entrance. Her blonde braid swung in time to her steps, mimicking the sway of her hips in the 2 short jean shorts she insisted on wearing that day. She'd grown up right before his eyes, taking on a womanly shape that had him worried. His role as her guardian was sure to get more complicated once she started college. She was a good kid, contentious as any teenage girl, but a hard worker. Both he and his sister were used to manual labor. Despite her petite figure and pretty face, she was tough as nails from doing chores and could hold her own. Lester hoisted his own set of boxes and followed his sister. Several trips later, they were both puffing from exertion. Lester had worked on the farm all his life and had the muscles to prove it, but so many trips up and down 2 flights of stairs was taking its toll. I need to take a break. Patsy bent over, hands on her thighs as she tried to catch her breath. Any water in the truck? Tendrils of hair were coming loose, framing her face with heat-induced curls. The siblings had the same naturally curly hair, but Patsy's was a shade lighter than his. Dirty blonde, she called it, while Lester's was a light brown. He, of course, kept his crop short, but Patsy insisted on keeping hers long and tried to straighten it each day. It was a chore that made no sense to him, but girls would be girls. I think there's some in the cab. Lester strode to the driver's side of the truck and opened the door with a jerk. He rummaged around behind the seat until he came up with 2 bottles of water. He tossed one to Patsy on his way around the vehicle, and she caught it with the quickness of an infielder. It's warm, she protested. Beggars can't be choosers. Lester downed the whole thing, then wiped his mouth with the back of his hand before crushing the bottle in his fist and tossing it into the box of the truck among the other contents. Okay, let's get this trunk out of here next. Lester jumped into the half-empty U-Haul trailer and tugged a large trunk toward the doors. It's too heavy for me. Patsy recapped her water and set it on the bumper of the trailer. Lester shot her a frown. Come on, princess, it's not going to move itself, and I don't see anybody else around, do you? Patsy sighed heavily and moved to take her place at the other end of the trunk. Lester took hold of one of the corners and lifted, trying to shimmy the heavy burden so that Patsy could better grasp it by the handles. Suddenly the trunk slipped, jamming his finger between it and the open doorway of the trailer. With a yelp, he snatched his finger away and squeezed it with his other hand. A few choice words escaped. I told you it was too heavy. Patsy cocked her head to one side in an I told you so manner and raised her brows. Need a hand? Lester looked up sharply. A man was standing on his 3rd-floor balcony overlooking the operation. He was tall and broad and was wearing a worn T-shirt and a dirty ball cap. Yeah, that'd be great, Lester called back. Be right down. The man waved and disappeared through his sliding glass doors. My lucky day, Patsy beamed up at her brother. Your new friend can take over from here. There's still plenty of small stuff, Lester said. Patsy rolled her eyes. I was just joking. Lester sighed. Sometimes his sister acted so immature. Okay, she was only 17, but she needed to start acting more grown up. He wasn't much older when he'd been thrown into more responsibility than most guys his age had ever dreamed of. Hi! Lester glanced back at the building. 2 small boys were watching from their own balcony 2 stories up. One had chocolate brown skin, while the other had straight black hair and an olive complexion. He just waved. Those little kids probably had nothing better to do, so let them watch if they wanted to. He noticed the curtains moving in another window on the 2nd floor. It was hard to remain anonymous in a place like this, where everyone was squished together like sardines in a can. Oh well, it was the best he could do. The helpful neighbor was approaching, so Lester turned his attention back to the matter at hand. Thanks again for offering to help. My name's Lester Ray Tibbett. Lester stretched out his hand. Jed Malloy. Jed had a firm grip and his hand almost dwarfed Lester's. Good to meet you. Me and my sister are just moving in, Lester said. Patsy rolled her eyes. Obviously, duh. Lester pointed a thumb back at Patsy. This is my sister, Patsy May. Just Pat, Patsy mumbled, looking down. Jed smiled. Pleased to meet ya. I got a couple of sisters of my own back home. You're mighty lucky to get this place. Old Tucker was hardly even cold when the place was advertised. A real housing shortage these days. You from out east? Lester asked. Jed's short, clipped words, extended R and lack of H, quickly betrayed his background. Yeah, Newfoundland. Lester nodded. Thought so. The accent kind of gives you away. I ain't the one with the accent. I keeps telling you Westerners, but yous don't listen too well. They all laughed. Well, we best get moving on. Jed clapped Lester soundly on the back, and they went straight for the trunk. Where's this beast going? With a grunt, the two men hoisted the heavy trunk and started lumbering for the entrance. That's all I'm going to read for now. It continues. So Lester and Patsy meet their first neighbor, Jed Malloy, who becomes very important in the series later on. And of course, there's lots more to come as they, adjust to their life in the city, and as each one of them gets entangled in not only some romance, but some other things, dangerous situations. So that is Neighbours, a contemporary Christian romance, series number 1. I hope you enjoyed just that little snippet. And I might read some more from this book, maybe from someone else's point of view at a different time. You can check it out in all my books and plays at my website, which is tracykraus.com. So we'll see you again next time. Thanks. Bye-bye.